Ladies and gentlemen, thinkers and seekers, welcome to Sophia Fireplace, the glowing hearth where stories simmer, ideas ignite, and ancestral wisdom crackles to life. Sophia is a font of wisdom from the global south where we gather not just to listen, but to remember, to reflect, and reimagine. Ladies and gentlemen, warriors of thought, wanderers of wisdom, and survivors of WhatsApp family groups, once again, welcome to Sophia Fireplace. Here, we don't just talk, we provoke, we ponder. Well, we occasionally pontificate, but we always keep it spicy like grandmother's Sunday stew. This is no ordinary podcast. No. This is where ancestral echoes meet modern chaos, where proverbs slap harder than politics, where satire dances with sorrow and narratives flirt with philosophy. Maybe you came for knowledge, maybe for laughs, maybe you just clicked the wrong link. Either way, you're here now. And you're welcome. So, grab your favorite drink, silence your inner colonizer, and take a seat by the fire, where tongues are sharp, minds are open, and the wisdom flows thicker than village gossip. Welcome, my friends, to Sophia Fireplace, where the past has teeth, the present has questions, and the future? Well, we are roasting it slowly over these flames. This is the font of wisdom from the global south, where knowledge isn't downloaded. It's passed down, stirred in iron pots, whispered under mango trees, and declared boldly in village squares with laughter, rhythm, and the occasional goat interrupting the ceremony. Here, we don't rush wisdom. We roast it slow. We don't just quote philosophers, we remember our grandmothers and grandfathers. We believe that a proverb shared by firelight hits differently than one tossed in a PowerPoint presentation. So, ladies and gentlemen, sit close, but mind the sparks. Bring your curiosity and maybe a snack. Because at Sophia Fireplace, the stories are hot, the truths are profound, and even the firewood has something to say. So now, let the flames speak, understanding the global south and its shared realities. One early morning, I sat on an old chair, tired and half awake, with just a bit of sunlight peeking through the torn curtain. I held an old mug of tea in my hands and scrolled through my phone without much thought. Suddenly, Kevin Hart, the American comedian's voice, came on loud and full of energy. The people in the video were laughing heartily. Then he leaned closer to the mic. The crowd went quiet. His smile was still there, but his eyes different and more serious. He said, "You ever notice how pain becomes funny when it's your own and you have made it through?" His words took me back to something my grandfather Basajja Mutuba used to say. A madman's dance is funny until it's your father who is mad. Everything around me went quiet. The room fell away. His words hit deep. The words didn't land like a joke. They curled in my chest, sat heavy on my ribs, and echoed louder than the laughs. Kevin then added, "When something about Africa is talked about, it's normally bad, normally violent. Something about the country all disease broken. It's never good. So, your perception is what people have forced you to believe." Ladies and gentlemen, his words didn't land like a punchline. They landed like a prophecy because, my dear Global South, if you do not tell your own story, if you don't speak of the aunties who grind millet with songs on their lips and the boys who build radios from scrap metal, of cities pulsing with tech, poetry and prayer, then someone else will tell your story for you. And they will not use your language. They will not mention your grandmother's wisdom or your cousin's invention. They will not see the full moon over Lake Victoria or hear the roar of local traffic in your local town like a jazz symphony. They will see only what fits their lens, and the world will believe it, as it has already done. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you mine and our Global South story. I was born in Africa, a continent that is part of the Global South, where the scent of red dust and mango trees mingled with the buzz of busy city streets. My earliest school days unfolded in a noisy urban corner of my country, where my single mother ran a modest business, nothing fancy, but just enough to keep a roof over our heads and pay my fees. Yeah, at least for a while. Between primary 1 and primary 3, I wore 4 different school uniforms. With each new school, I carried a crumpled report card and my mother's quiet hope I would finally fit in. Teachers whispered that I leaned more towards stories than formulas, more towards rhythm than reaction equations. I was drawn to the stage rather than the science laboratory. One day, over tea and cassava, my mother looked at me with a mix of worry and sarcasm and asked, "Don't you want to speak English through the nose like those British people?" That was her way of saying she was done investing in what she called my extravagant hobbies: music, dance, drama, and storytelling. So, she sent me away to the village where dreams rarely wore shoes. I was to live with my grandmother, a woman as rooted in the earth as the banana trees behind her heart. However, fate had its own rhythm. My grandmother, may she rest in melody, was a woman of lullabies and stories. Every evening, after the sun had slipped behind the hills and the last millet grain has been swallowed, she would settle on her mat, look at me with soft insistence and say, "Roberto, sing me something or tell me a story." Her eyes twinkled with anticipation as she spoke. The next term had just begun when I moved in with this sweet grandmother. Without hesitation, this beautiful woman marched me to the best school within reach, which was 8 kilometers away. She introduced me to the principal, not by my name, but as entertainer, and Mwogera Luzungu, the one who speaks English. It wasn't a joke. The teachers embraced me. Unlike in the city, they did not try to cage my creativity or squeeze my mind into a science-shaped box. Some days, during tea breaks, they would call me to the staff room just to recite a story or sing something in English. They clapped. They smiled. Oddly, my command of English became a shield. In a system where speaking your mother tongue could earn you a slap or an afternoon of weeding the compound, I was spared. I avoided punishment not because I was disciplined, but because I was fluent in English. In my country, English is more than just a language of instruction. It's a language of survival. By the way, it's often seen as a marker of intelligence and sophistication. From kindergarten through university, it dominates every blackboard and textbook. In this country, A thematic curriculum was once introduced to revive local languages in early primary education. However, in urban areas, this effort was largely overlooked. We are metropolitan, the urban schools would say, so they start in English. Well, back to my story. When the school reports came in, one term after another, my mother noticed a consistent pattern. Music, drama, and storytelling consistently received top marks, while physics and chemistry did not. I remember my mother finally accepting my school reports and enrolling me in a top city school, perhaps realizing that her loss was my liberation. Well, she called it a loss, but on my side it was a win. Years later, I still carry those questions from the village to the capital, from the classroom to academic forums. They echo in my mind like drums at dusk. Why were music, dance and drama and storytelling dismissed as co-curricular side dishes instead of the main meal? Why did the teachers who looked like me, spoke my language and shared my homeland punish us for speaking our native languages in school? Were we not born in the post-independence period? Why do we still cling to colonial scripts while countries like Germany, Korea, France preserve their native tongues and thrive? Why do Western theories such as competence-based education and standardized testing continue to dominate curriculum reforms in the global South, often marginalizing African educational philosophies like Ubuntu and other Afrocentric philosophies that encourage community and cultural identity? I've written novels in my local language, yet native speakers beg me to translate them. Put it in English, they say, it will have more value. Why must the indigenous be validated in a foreign language? Now that we have a competence-based curriculum trend in the global South, will agriculture be considered important? Or is it just old wine in a new syllabus? Another glossary branding with little change? Why did I memorize the rainlands, the Canadian prairies, and the Mississippi River? Why did I learn the battles of Waterloo, the tales of ancient Greek gods, and the capitals of far-off empires, but never the name of the river flowing behind my grandmother's kitchen? Why do we cling to histories of distant lands, yet turn a blind eye to the stories that pulse through our own soil? Isn't it time we reclaimed our roots before they vanish into silence? We know every detail about Napoleon Bonaparte. How many shoes Marie Antoinette owned? But ask us about our own ancestral lineage and our minds go blank. How did we come to know so much about distant kings and queens, yet forget the stories of our own roots? Oh, we know everything about the Premier League, the players, their histories, their salaries, even who they are married to. But ask us about the players on our local teams and we shrug. They are just local. We are not interested. Is that just a preference, or is that neocolonialism hiding in plain sight? Is it possible to preserve our culture without our language? Or is language the living heart that carries the spirit of our identity and history? These questions are not just echoes in my mind. They are a relentless drumbeat, a summons, a challenge demanding that we rethink what education truly means in the global South. They force us to confront uncomfortable truths. Truths about whose knowledge is celebrated and whose is silenced. Truth about whose voices are amplified and whose are dismissed. Education should never be a place where children are punished for speaking their own languages, where local stories and ancestral wisdom are pushed to the margins, where the heartbeats of our culture are muffled under foreign scripts. On the contrary, education should be a place where the rhythm of our grandmother's song rises like a morning chorus, where the laughter of barefoot children echoes like thunder, and where the hopes of mothers searching for meaning bloom like wildflowers in barren fields. Behind every reform, every syllabus, every classroom, there are lives. Lives waiting to be honored, not erased. Lives yearning to be heard, not hushed. Lives demanding recognition, not rejection. If we continue, ladies and gentlemen, in the global south, to cling stubbornly to foreign scripts and Western theories, while turning a blind eye to rich African philosophies like Ubuntu, we teach our children to turn their backs on their own heritage, their own identity, their own future. But what if education became a bridge instead of a barrier? What if it became a beacon instead of a shadow? What if the arts and languages and the stories we once dismissed as co-curricular became the very core, the lifeblood of learning and growth? This is the urgent work ahead. A radical reimagining of education, not as a tool of erasure, but as a force of restoration. Because behind every lesson I have learned stands not just a barefoot child, not just a singing mother, but the living pulse of a people, resilient, vibrant, and ready to reclaim their story on their own terms. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sofira. Allow me to stop here today and we begin from there next week. Please, I beseech you to subscribe, to like and share, such that we can walk together on a journey of reclaiming our voices, reclaiming our education, reclaiming our identity. Because if you don't tell your story, somebody else will tell it the way they feel they would like the world to perceive it.